I think early on, I would have really appreciated if someone would have told me how big of a jerk I was. I was a good
I'll tell you. No,
and thanks. And I've always got room to grow. I feel like even back then, I was a pretty good husband, pretty good dad, pretty good boss, pretty good coworker, team member. But I had a lot of room to grow.
This is the Live, Lead, Last podcast.
Welcome to the Live, Lead, Last podcast. Our goal is to help you live with intention, lead with integrity, and leave a legacy that matters. I'm your host, James Duvall, and I'm so glad you're here today. Hey, let me ask you, have you ever felt stuck or out of rhythm in your leadership? If so, I want to personally invite you to take advantage of the 5-day leadership reset to help you refocus your priorities, re-engage your purpose, and lead with clarity. It's totally free, and you can get it today at liveleadlast.com/reset. Now on to today's episode. We're diving into a topic that's absolutely foundational for leadership in 2025, relational intelligence. As more teams struggle with burnout, low engagement, and misalignment, the best leaders aren't just getting results, they're getting real. And that starts with self-awareness, trust, and presence. My guest today is my good friend, Dave Kush, someone I've known for over 20 years and a leader I deeply respect. Dave brings over 3 decades of experience leading teams in both the marketplace and ministry. He's a former COO in the land development industry, and he spent the last 18 years building churches and developing leaders from the inside out. With certifications in emotional intelligence, SHRM, Myers-Briggs, and Giant, Dave now equips leaders through his organization, Framework Planning, helping teams move from dysfunction to high performance. In this conversation, you'll hear Dave's from high capacity to high intention, why success without health is failure in disguise, and how leaders can become the kind of people others actually want to follow. Let's jump into the conversation. Dave, man, it's so great to actually have you in my office to do a live conversation. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, man, it is a great honor to be here with you, my friend, and a great leader. So this
Awesome.
is great.
So let's start by telling us a little bit about your background. What led you to the work you're doing today?
Yeah, wow. First generation American. So English growing up was actually my second language. My parents were born in Russia and Ukraine, and both families, my parents actually grew up as kids in refugee camps in Western Europe right after World War II. So when they got over here, both families came with nothing, and my parents met each other when they were teenagers. So I'm the first one born in this country, and really hard work and achievement was their rule. I mean, this is what they did, and this is how I learned to grow up and survive, and that's all I knew. So I was the first to graduate college in my own family, and that was a big thing for everyone. I joined a Fortune 500 company out of college, and then came down here to Florida. Got into the home building business with accounting, finance, land development, construction management. So the background of growing up like that as a first generation American, I was really hard driven, and I was a hard driver myself. So I was really kind of too busy with work. I mean, that's what it was all about, to really be present with my wife, my kids. I was always preoccupied. I think I was a pretty good dad, pretty good husband, but still very preoccupied, never really fully present. So I could always have room for growth and all of that. So, and then I was in construction for about 15 years, running companies, and then finally shifted over to working for a church. Yeah. And that was a huge shift for me, mindset wise, and even self-awareness. I learned a lot of lessons before I left construction, and then I learned even more lessons, coming into church world, nonprofit world. So still did construction, finance, and got into ministry. Now, last 7 years has been human resources, leadership development, doing a lot of development of staff and pastors. So, and through all that, getting certified with SHRM, it's a HR group, and EQI, emotional intelligence assessments, certified coach, Myers-Briggs, life planning, and then Giant 5 Voices certified. So that's, great tool, and one of my primary tools right now. But, I'm driven to help other leaders because of all of my background and experience. I want to see other leaders become better. And so I want them to learn from my mistakes and some of the shortcomings I've seen in others. Hopefully I can pass that along and really help people grow and develop to be better leaders.
That's awesome. And we've known each other for, 20 years. And so it's been a real privilege, honor on this side to kind of watch your growth and development and be on the journey with you. Our kids have grown up together, or, we've done some crazy things together. And so to kind of watch that journey, even as you stepped out of the construction space into the church space was really cool. Was there a moment that you realized there was maybe something missing, and maybe about leadership, maybe how most leaders like approach leadership and their teams? When did you start feeling like something was off?
I think from the very start, even in the Fortune 500 company, and then through all the groups I was with and teams, I actually saw some really great examples of bad leadership and, those domineering, those self-serving positional leaders. At the same time, I also had the privilege of working for and with some really great role models. So you had these are the leaders that really challenged me, encouraged me to become better. And these were the servant leaders that I really took notice of. So when I was asked to take charge and look after and run a company with a whole team, I had a choice to make. Do I follow the domineering boss side of things, or do I follow the group that's, challenging and encouraging? And I chose that, the challenging, encouraging route. But the problem was I still wasn't self-aware, didn't have the right tools, and really hadn't grown and developed as a leader yet. So even though I had a lot of good examples, I don't know that I had a lot of good practice in how to be a great leader. So, and I think one of the things that I noticed missing in myself was I was effective. I mean, we took this company that I was asked to run. It was first year was $2 million in sales. We built it in 5 years. It grew from 2 million to 20 million.
Wow.
High stress. So what I'm saying is the team was really effective. We were effective as a team. But what I realized too was one of my shortcomings is I'm a rugged individualist by nature. That's my tendency, is to just do everything myself, get impatient with people. And so that came out, and stress can bring out and highlight the biggest weaknesses in a leader. Yeah. And that's what it did with me. So when you have high growth like that, you can be effective, but if you're not healthy, you're not a great team.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I really became intentional about developing myself. So I've got this analogy. I was age 38. This is getting close to the time when I was finishing that whole season. Went to a doctor and got blood test. And the doctor came back after the blood test, and he says, "Hey, I got good news and bad news. The good news is your bad cholesterol is really low.
Yeah.
Here's the bad news. Your good cholesterol is also too low."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, okay, great. So just give me, the diet, the food that I need to eat to fix that." He's like, No. That doesn't get fixed with diet. That's actually exercise. You got to be intentional. I'm like, okay, so if I run like once a week, he goes, "No, you need to start running like every day to start building up your good cholesterol." So I realized at that point, and that was the analogy I would make, is you could actually be doing nothing egregiously wrong. You could be not making any huge mistakes, but if you're not intentional about the good stuff, building good practices, good habits into your life, you could still be unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so for me, I knew I had to become intentional about, reading, getting coaching, and just being intentional about developing who I am as a leader. So
that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just with my network group today, and we were talking about, I actually shared the thought that, the truth is most employees don't leave jobs, they leave bad bosses, right?
Exactly right.
And so many leaders don't actually do that hard work of developing themselves. And so, yeah, it's such a great piece. Before I ask the next question, just be careful on tapping on the, yeah, no worries. So yeah, so it is really good that we're like developing ourselves and reading and getting coaching. But so what was the big shift in your own leadership? Like what shifted for you?
I think early on, I would have really appreciated if someone would have told me how big of a jerk I was. I was a good...
I'll tell you. No,
thanks. And I've always got room to grow. I feel like even back then, I was a pretty good husband, pretty good dad, pretty good boss. pretty good coworker, team member, but I had a lot of room to grow. And like I mentioned before, the stress actually highlighted a lot of the shortcomings and brought out my bad, unhealthy tendencies. So I think the one thing that I really realized about myself was I needed to be fully present in the here and now. I think when I started turning like 40, 42, I was like, I really am not good at this. Not present. I can become a better listener as a leader. And that was a huge blind spot for me. When I realized how bad I was as a listener and wasn't ever present, it made a huge shift, a big turn for my leadership.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think, I want to get into a little bit later, maybe some of those lessons that you learned about listening, because so many leaders are bad at listening. But you've been building teams now for over 30 years. Like, talk to us about what makes teams successful in your perspective.
Yeah. Successful is a tricky word, right? Because you can see success. Like I mentioned before, we had high growth. We went from 2 million to 20 million. And so we had success, but I don't know that we were successful as a team. I think there's two components to being successful if you are a healthy and effective team. You have to really have both of those, because if you see success, but you're not healthy, you're just going to have a revolving door with your team. Like you said, people leave bad managers. So those two components are huge. I think another component here is trust. So critical. And this is probably one of the most important components for a team, is establishing solid trust in a team. And communication, how does a team communicate with themselves, especially when they're dealing with conflict, and they got to deal with conflict in a healthy way. So if they're not communicating, they need to get better at that. And then alignment, you and I, we cycle. And I think early on when we started biking together, there was we had to learn how to communicate with each other. We had to learn to trust each other, right? Because we were riding so close, within inches of each other's wheels. But I could be riding really close to you, trust you, communicate well. But if I'm not aligned, I'm not getting the full benefit of, we draft off each other for wind purposes and staying efficient in riding. And that's the same with a team. If the team's not in alignment with purposes and goals, it's not going to be as successful as it can be. So,
yeah. I also think about, Patrick Lencioni talks about teams should be smart and healthy.
Yes.
So there's that idea of what you're saying, healthy and effective. And we know that so many organizations, just working with Giant, that so many organizations are driven by alignment and execution, but don't spend enough time on that healthy relational trust side of pieces. And I love that analogy of us cycling. I was also thinking about alignment. When I think about alignment, I think about, a car that's out of alignment. You're constantly fighting to keep it going in the right direction.
It's a great picture, yeah.
And so that, having a aligned purpose and goals is so good. So recently you started a company called Framework Planning. So is it Framework Planning, right?
Framework Planning.
Okay.
Call it Framework.
Let me start that again.
Yep.
So recently you just started a new company called Framework Planning. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I really want to help leaders avoid my past mistakes and missed opportunities. I really have a burning desire to get into the business world, work with leaders, work with teams in businesses that are struggling with some problems. We know that a lot of teams, most teams that take a team performance assessment that we use, the data shows that most teams are operating at about 60% of their capacity. 60% is miserable. So what does that look like? It looks like ineffective communication. It looks like low trust work relationships. Teams are not aligned. Subpar execution. Overextended capacity, which, stops growth. It's a ceiling. So for me, another analogy would be our house when we moved in 8 years ago, and it needed a lot of renovation. There was a lot of the house that we actually couldn't use. And so we started remodeling it, and there was, about 60% usable space. So we're paying full price for this house, and we're only getting 60% of benefit out of this house. So what do we need to do? We needed to bring in the right tools and the right materials to actually get it to where we could increase the capacity. And now we have full use of the house. after putting those tools and materials into place. So you need to increase capacity as a team. And when our data is showing most teams are at 60%, there's obviously a huge need to improve that.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the house and knowing that we are neighbors, knowing what the house looked like 8 years ago and what it looks like now, you can see the positive effect when you move from 60% to 100% or towards 100%. I know you guys are still, making the changes and so forth,
Always work. Yeah.
But the improvement when you have the right tools and the right process, the right people in place is huge. So talk to us about what exactly you do with Framework. How does it work?
Yeah. So very simply, we help organizations build healthy culture and high-performing teams. If I click down on that, what does that mean? We do team workshops. Very practically, these team workshops build high engagement. We use tech tools, online tools for helping the teams. And then we also do individual coaching for executives and team members that need additional work and one-on-one time. And then we also, one of my heart's passion is really to develop a leader framework for organizational development. So that is a key for a lot of companies to put in some sort of leadership development framework so their team actually understands how to develop. And then coming this winter, we're actually putting together some exciting new things where teams from across or individuals from across the country can sign up for retreats. So we got team retreats and individual retreats in Florida coming January through March. So we're going to be posting some available dates here.
That's awesome. Yeah. So how is what you do in Framework different than traditional leadership consulting or team building?
I really think there's a lot of great leadership consulting and team building out there. There's so much work to be done with all the teams that we see. But I'd say if I were to compare it to traditional leadership development, that has typically been a lot of lecture, less engagement and interaction. So we really work with less lecture, more team engagement, more interaction during our workshops and one-on-ones. And then it's really less about achieving goals as an individual or as a team, and more about becoming a leader that's worth following and a team that people actually want to be part of.
Yeah.
Because again, you can be effective, but if you're not healthy, that's going to change the dynamic. And so, the leadership tools that we use really take these approaches to the next level. Yeah. And the tools are the visual tools, practical tools are things that a leader can turn around the same day and use with their team. We use with another individual. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Really effective.
I don't know where I heard it just recently. It may have been our friend Jeremy Kubicek who said that he was talking about the transition of what's happening in leadership development, where it's gone from inspirational to transformational. And I think that's really the heart of what you're doing with Framework. But I think he said, if I remember right, like inspiration without application is just entertainment.
Yeah, it is. And I think we see a lot of events still, and a lot of these events are great. I grew up going to these events, half-day seminars or leadership development things, but you walk away, you have a ton of notes, a lot of fill in the blanks, and not a lot of tools to actually put into play.
Yeah.
These are great tools for mindset building, but then when you talk about actually getting out of a conference center's four walls and getting into a business's four walls, getting to where they're actually doing the work themselves, it becomes more effective because it's more applicable and relatable to them.
And you just have that nature that you're not taking the whole organization to a conference usually,
Right.
And so how do you pass on the information across the corporation, where I like, this idea of organizational development system or a way to get it culturally into the organization so that everybody gets the information and can thrive in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
So one of your core concepts is this idea of relational intelligence. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you see relational intelligence? What does that look like?
Yeah, when I was growing up, the buzzword was IQ, and I already took an IQ test in school. And
I flunked all of them.
Yeah. I mean, these were weird because, they measured how intelligent you are compared to everybody else. That therefore made you a better person. And then we got into the 90s, and the new term and the new studies showed emotional intelligence that was actually more important than IQ. And, do you know what's going on inside you? Do you know how to manage your emotions? Do you know how to manage your relationships with others? And so taking all of that, but really now relational intelligence is really becoming self-aware as an individual, becoming secure and confident as a leader. And then others aware, being able to connect with others in a great way, in a very important way. And then the ability to build trust and work more effectively with others. So I think that ability to build trust and work more effectively is where the relational intelligence side comes in.
Yeah, that's good. So both of us use a tool called Five Voices as a primary tool. And I'd love to just hear your thoughts on voices, the Five Voices tool, and how you would communicate that, helping people understand their voice.
So, and both you and I know a lot of other tools, like some great tools. Enneagram, I've learned a lot through that. I'm a 3, helpless 3. And, at Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTP, so I understand what that means. I feel like the Five Voices, when I started to understand it better, I was like, okay, Pioneer Connector, what does that mean for me? I started reading it and I was like, oh my goodness, this is me. I'm looking in, it's a great lens to understand how to see other people. Mm-hmm. But actually for me, more importantly, at the front end of it was a mirror. It's like, okay, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much that an assessment puts you in a box and tells you exactly who you are and what you're predicting what you're going to do or how you're going to act, but it is a predisposition. As a person, as a leader, your leadership voice, what are your natural tendencies, your natural wiring? And so for me, when I talk about the Five Voices, I talk about how important it is to see it as a mirror for understanding yourself first, and then using it as a lens to look through when you're looking at other people and working with other people. And so understanding your natural wiring, your strengths, and then your tendencies. When stress hits, what are your natural tendencies? How did you just blow something up? Why did that happen? How can you fix that? So we talk a lot about, reflection and improvement.
Yeah. So there's Five Voices: Pioneer, Connector, Guardian, Creative, and Nurture. What's your voice?
Pioneer Connector.
Okay. And how does that play out in your leadership?
Yeah, it's been fun because I didn't realize, the terminology when you get under stress, or the weapon system of a pioneer is a grenade launcher. When you're sitting in a meeting or you're sitting at home or you're dealing with 3 kids that are screaming at each other, how does that grenade launcher, start to work as a parent, as a husband, as a coworker, as a boss? So I've got to be very, very aware of some of the tendencies of a pioneer, and a pioneer connector would be my second. So everybody's really made up of all 5 voices, and everyone's got a voice order. Yeah. And so mine particularly is Pioneer, Connector, Creative, Guardian, Nurture. So Nurture would be my least familiar voice, and that is exactly my wife's voice. Yeah. So, she and I are on the opposite ends of the spectrum, and it shows up every single day. Yeah. So it's helped in my marriage, understanding how to be with my wife, how to talk with her, how to listen to her better, how to not interrupt her when she's talking, and how to ask her, pull the best out of her. So it's been a super effective tool for me to know all the voice tendencies, not just my own, but how other people are wired. Yeah. So that I can interact with them better.
Yeah. I love it too, because it's when you, again, in this organizational development piece, when everybody in the organization begins to know their voice, I know when I sit in the meeting with you, if I know you're a Pioneer Connector, well, I know your tendencies, or the typical tendencies of Pioneer Connector, what you need from me in that conversation. And I can actually show up and actually empower you in that. Whereas if, I'm a creative pioneer, and so my last voice would be Nurture, which is my wife's also. So again, like you, I've had to learn how to not, and my weapon is, I can be very laser focused, almost like a sniper trying to take somebody else. I become very sarcastic. I'm going to assassinate you, especially if I think you're incompetent. But, in relationships, you actually have to, if you don't know that, you can really hurt somebody that's working for you or somebody that you're underneath. So that's why and that, again, I was thinking about this, like you said, you're an ENFP?
ENTP. Yeah.
ENTP. So if you told me that, I don't know what that means.
Right. It's another language. Yeah.
Right. And like, if I told you I was, you would know it because you're certified in Myers-Briggs, but most people aren't. And so I'm not going to be able to like make that very actionable in our conversation. But with 5 voices, you can actually make a tool that's actionable in relationship and relational trust, right?
Yeah, and what I love is a lot of this is based on just science and observation over about 100 years, but knowing, like, we just talked a lot about the weaknesses and some of the stress points for some of these voices and how they play out. But I don't know that I answered your original question. The pioneer voice is going to be typified as someone who's very strategic, very much to the point, very direct, and very mission focused. And so that type of personality is going to tend to run over people.
Right.
But also it's a personality that's going to get a lot done. And, sometimes also from a pioneer, they're going to be great people to start initiatives, but maybe not the great follow-up people. That's where the other voices come in, knowing, who to get on your team, the great follow-up people, follow-through people, the detailed people who are doing risk assessment. And then people who understand other people's, how people are hearing things.
Right.
So yeah, I might be strategic in getting things done, but if I don't know what people want, what people need to hear, that's where some of the other voices really come in as great benefits. So
and I can see how that's really powerful for framework, because that missing voice can really affect an organization.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, and typically, high levels of leadership, the C-suites, the executive teams, the leadership teams are made up of the more dominant, loud voices, the pioneers, connectors, guardians. And so, you're missing, a lot of times you're not careful, you're missing what's really happening in the present day from the nurturers who are kind of champions of people and kind of have a touch for that, right?
And when you have just understanding that the nurturer voice and the guardian voice make up almost 75% of the population.
Yeah.
And the connectors and the pioneers actually make a very small percentage of the population.
Right.
Then you start realizing, okay, well, if the pioneers are making all the decisions, building all the communication, they're not really speaking to the whole population. You really need to have it filtered through a nurturer voice, a creative voice. Yeah. And so those are very helpful.
That's good. So let's turn to this idea of, 5 voices. How do you use that to help teams build trust, them understanding their naturally wiring? How does that actually practically build into an organization, building a high trust culture?
I love this topic and we actually have a whole workshop on this. And I love the concept of the 4 C's. The 4 C's would be character, chemistry, competency, credibility. So the key here to remember is none of us, regardless of your voice, leadership voice, none of us are going to be naturally strong in having all 4 of those C's when we're interacting with people, especially people we don't know. So understanding which ones you're strong in and which ones you're naturally weaker in, knowing your weak areas are actually going to help you to be a little bit more intentional about building trust in that way. So for me as a pioneer, I'm going to be weaker in chemistry. I'm going to walk into I got to realize it's a blind spot. People aren't naturally going to like me. So I've got to compensate a little bit for that. And then the other thing, character, the word character, and like I consider myself to be a person of high integrity. So character is really important to me. But what I don't realize is because I'm so driven, so bottom line, I get right to the point, very strategic. People, when they see my approach and the way I communicate and the way I really charge hard on things, they sometimes don't know what my motive is, what my intention is. And so oftentimes that can be misinterpreted as me having a hidden agenda or a hidden motive. And so I've got to compensate for that. For example, a pioneer voice has to compensate and actually let people know verbally, express that you've got their best interest in mind.
Right.
And so I've got to compensate overcompensate for that weakness. And every one of the voices has the same type of challenges in a different category of that building trust. So,
and it's
really
actually
important.
easier. Each voice has a place that's easier to lean into trust. So for you, you're looking for competency, right?
Competency, credibility. These aren't going to be a problem for me, and that's what I'm going to be looking for in other people too.
And you're gonna be somebody's gonna be easy to build trust with you if they're highly competent and and credible.
Yeah.
Whereas, like for your wife, she wants the chemistry and character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that, doesn't mean that competency and credibility don't matter, but she's going to look first and open up first to character and chemistry.
Right. And for a connector voice coming in the room, I might really like them, say, hey, they're a great person. I just don't know that they're going to follow through with this.
Right.
They don't have a track record. They don't have a track record. So that's where the trust breaks down for each of the voices. So understanding that is really important. I love going through that workshop because people I see light bulbs come on all the time through that.
Yeah. So can you share a time when you learned this lesson the hard way in your own leadership?
Yeah. Well, when I was leading the construction company, my team knew that I was competent. I had credit. I had a good track record. I'd been in the industry for 15 years. So the issue though was I wasn't a real likable person. I would walk into the room, I'd bark some commands and call a meeting and this is what we're doing. Call out the agenda and I really kind of go through the task list. But I'm not taking time for the people.
Yeah,
I wasn't taking time and asking how they're doing. Didn't know the names of their spouses. It just was a work first, person last type approach. And so naturally, they were going to be questioning my motives, my character. And I did a terrible job of letting them know I actually cared, and had, the best intentions in mind for them. So because of that, they were going to be suspicious and that I had a hidden agenda. So not listening for me was a big aha too. So, I had to, beyond just kind of establishing some chemistry and all character, being fully present with people. Because if I wasn't listening, they knew. I mean, if someone's not listening to you, you say something and while you're talking, they're not listening to you at all. They're coming up with the answer and response in their mind, and their eyes are somewhere else. And so that was me. I gave the impression that I just didn't care about them and really only cared about my own agenda and my goals. So
were there some tendencies that actually played out? What did that look like when you're in that space of missing people in your leadership?
I think you shut people down and you don't get the best out of them. You get sometimes a passive aggressive approach. They're just going through the motions to get things done. And so, I would get impatient with people. And when I saw that things weren't happening as quickly as I wanted them to, or if someone wasn't getting it, I would jump in. I would interrupt with things that I thought were more important. And I would shut people down that I thought, were disagreeing with me. So, that's where the grenade launcher came out. And I actually probably did a little bit of damage. And I have said this before, anybody that I worked with in my 20s and 30s, I've actually had to go back and apologize to because I've got a lot to apologize for.
So, I think probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast are, business leaders, entrepreneurs, creators, growth-minded people, are probably type A personalities, maybe a lot in that pioneer space, strategic. What are some practical things that you would suggest that listeners could do to become more present with their teams?
Yeah. So what I'd love to do is post the active listening audit in your show notes, but I would say, to summarize maybe a couple of bullet points here, pause and listen. Actually, when you're listening to someone, ask some clarifying questions. Like, okay, someone has just told you something. Now, to show them that you've just listened to them and heard what they said, ask a couple questions that are specific to what they just said.
Yeah.
So they don't believe that you just are flying past what they just said. And another way of doing this is repeating back what you heard in your own words. And I've used this tool a lot, especially when someone's very serious and they're covering something that's very important to them. They get done and I pause and I actually turn around and say, okay, so let me repeat back to you what I just heard in my own words and make sure I got it right. That's huge because now the person is feeling what they were heard, right? I was listening to them. And I think one of in my own mind, in my own head, I've got to be aware of what my mental distractions are. So I could be thinking about the score of a football game or the next thing I need to do or the next meeting.
Yeah.
And I could be stressed about something else. And so when someone's talking to me, that's actually getting my mental distractions are getting in the way of actually listening.
Right.
So I got to be aware of what's going on in my own head so that I can actually work with that and be intentional about shutting that noise down so I can listen. And eye contact, body language, all of those things. So, but I think the listening audit would be really great for our listeners. If you're interested in that, that'd be great.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit more about leadership development and specifically what you have as a leadership development framework. Why is it important? What does it look like?
So, okay, if you can picture maybe 2 or 3 levels in your organization for what skills, what competencies make up an effective leader in your organization. So every leader, every organization has a set of expectations. Okay, we want all of our employees to be team players. We want them to be teachable. Those could be some examples of what every organization would want and expect in any employee working in their company. So you start off with being a team player, and then you realize that, hey, the next level, what would be the next level from that? So this framework actually builds a framework, a road, if you would, to what are the skills that I need to be building if I'm working here with this company, with this team. How do I continue to grow as an individual? What's my next step of growth? And so to give a clear example, if I'm just joining an organization and they've discovered that I'm a team player, building unity, I'm not divisive, disruptive, that's great. If I'm ever going to be a team leader, just giving me a title and giving me a team to lead isn't enough. I actually need to be able to build a team. I need to have the competency, the skill. I need to know how to build a team. So putting those expectations out in front of everybody and letting them know, hey, this is how you grow in our organization. And I feel like that is such an important framework to have for every organization.
Yeah. So I understand it. It's basically helping somebody come in as an individual contributor. These are the base competencies, values, skills that you need to have to be part of our organization. Everybody, this is bottom line. You have to do this.
Yep.
To kind of move to that next level, maybe moving from individual contributor to maybe a manager of people, you need to elevate these certain skills to that. And then the next level, maybe you're mid-level manager of managers.
Yep.
So it actually also for an organization creates a succession plan, right?
Exactly. You're building specific skills. So having a click down on some bullet points for being a team builder would actually be now you have the skills to identify other individuals that need to be on your team and how to get them incorporated into the team. You need to know how to train a new person on your team, how to equip them with the right tools, with the right processes, and how to build trust and unity within the team. This is important for a team leader. You can't be a team leader if you don't know how to build trust and unity within your team. And we talk a lot about support challenge. How do you bring the right calibrated levels of support and challenge to your team, to your individuals? And then, really, I feel like it's important as a team leader, you got to set an example as a leader. So where do you go from there in an organization? Once you learn some of those skills, well, for me, I believe the next level is, like you said, leading other leaders, other team leaders. And that really now takes you to a level of like being a coach, being a mentor, a go-to, a resident expert in how to build teams. And so a new team leader would be coming to you now that you've developed those skills and know how to do it, know how to train other people, and you're a resource. And, those skills continue to scale.
Yeah.
In whatever organization you're in.
Yeah. I'm currently reading through for the second time the book Traction and talking about having the right people in the right seats. And sometimes you have the wrong person in the right seat or the right person in the wrong seat. But you need a lot of it has to do with, do they get it? Do they understand what the role takes? Do they really want to do it? And then do they have the capacity, right?
Right.
The first two are really based on the individual. Capacity really is a partnership with the organization to help build the capacity to do that. So it is really important that you actually, I love that framework, that you actually have a structure that you're intentionally developing people to the next level so that you can always have the right people in the right seat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Another example of that would be at the very entry level, you want people to be encouraging and right, just as a team member, you want to be someone who's kind of up and encouraging and always speaking positively. Well, what's the next level from that? The next level would be a great communicator. So whether you're a great communicator with a couple of people or a whole crowd of people, and then the third level from that is once you've developed all those skills of being a great communicator, you really start to turn to this concept of being an inspirational leader, really casting vision and driving the culture, building the culture stronger with your words, with your communication to the team. So, yeah, another example.
What happens in an organization that doesn't have that kind of clear development path?
Well, I think that if you take a look at any organization, you're going to have low performers, medium performers, high performers. With the problem with, if you don't have a leader framework, if you don't have some set expectations on how to grow, what's going to happen is your high performers are going to leave because those are the people that want to grow. And if you're not providing some track, some roadmap for how to become a better person, doesn't mean you have to promote them every 6 months. If the person knows that you're intentional about just developing them, even if they stay in that same role, they're still growing as an individual. They're understanding more. They're becoming a stronger leader. They're going to stay because they know, hey, I am growing here probably more than I've ever grown in any other position.
Yeah.
And that means a lot. So high performers want to grow. If you don't provide a path, they're going to leave. They're going to go grow somewhere else.
Yeah. One of my favorite statements, I'll kind of paraphrase, it was from Richard Branson, one of his books, is like to create a culture that helps people become employees that could go anywhere and work anywhere, but it's such a great leadership culture that they don't want to go anyplace else.
Exactly. Even for higher pay.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're motivated, if they're developing, if they're, growing, that's a huge benefit that's not going to happen in a lot of organizations.
So true.
So if someone's listening and thinking, I want to start building this kind of trust on my teams, what can they do to begin, or where should they begin?
There's a couple things you can do as an individual leader without any outside resources. You can actually just go get some feedback from people that you work with. You get some feedback from your spouse at home. Like, what's it like to be on the other side of me? Learning your own natural tendencies. Of course, we have some great tools to be able to kind of dive into that with the 5 voices assessment, some other tools, and just being intentional about changing how you respond when those natural tendencies happen the next time. Like, how am I going to respond the next time that stress point hits? Because I screwed up last time. And so I think the daily reflection as a leader is so important. I try to do this, 10, 15 minutes every day. End of the day, before I get home, like what didn't go great? How do I do better tomorrow?
Yeah.
And,
So are there ways for them to know if they're actually developing people instead of just managing them? How would they know?
Yeah, I think we need to, and we just talked about this with a team I'm working with now. How do we push pause and sharpen our saw? The old Stephen Covey 7 habits of highly effective people. The 7th habit was sharpening the saw. And that sounds kind of weird, but if you're sawing wood all day, eventually that saw is going to get dull. If you keep sawing, you're gonna feel like you're effective, and you're gonna keep working. And you sometimes feel like, well, I can't stop and sharpen the saw because if I stop, I'm going to lose time. But actually, stopping and sharpening the saw will actually make you more effective. You'll saw through the wood faster. And I think that's the same way with skills. We need to take time to sharpen our skills and the people around us. So if people around us aren't sharpening their skills, taking moments in the week or in the month to actually improve in some of these skills, reflection, challenging people, but it actually often requires us pausing, getting stuff done. And that's the painful thing. I think a lot of leaders need to get over and realize, okay, in order for someone to get better, they need to pause and go a little slower because they actually go faster.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about framework planning, a lot about development and so forth. So if you could boil down like your vision for the leaders that you work with, what's your vision? What do you hope happens in their lives? What do you hope they become?
I think over the years, what I've realized is it's not a one size fit all or one model or one thing that you're going after. I think every individual, every leader is unique with their own gifting, what they can contribute to an organization, how they can lead better. And so regardless of where a person is with their skill set and with their gifting, they should always be becoming the best version of themselves. And that concept of becoming the best version, I can't become my coworker. That person's got different skills, different talents, gifting. I need to become the best version of myself so that I can actually improve the organization with my gifting. And, it's not just applying this in the workplace, because we talked a lot about here in this conversation in the workplace, but really, how are you leading yourself personally? I love and I've got a vision of seeing people grow and develop themselves personally and lead themselves better, because this is an inside out thing. If it's not happening on the inside, the outside is going to be a mess, and you can only fake it so long. But so someone leading themselves personally and then actually being more present with their family, their spouse, this is huge. And take it from me, sometimes it doesn't play out really well on a family vacation.
Yeah.
You're working really hard to take a vacation, and then you go and you're preoccupied the whole time.
Yeah.
And then it's a mess and you don't enjoy it. And you're more stressed out when you get home and back to work because you've just messed up a lot of your relationship with your family, your spouse. So I think for me, the vision would be to see not just leaders becoming more effective, but becoming more healthy. And that's a key. That's where we're going to see culture change.
Yeah. So many leaders are crushing it in the office, but crashing at home.
Oh yeah. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And you can only do that because you only have one life. It's one whole life. So even if you're crushing it at workplace for a while, it's going to catch up with you because your relationships. So going back to this whole idea of relational intelligence, it really is important that you understand yourself so you can lead yourself so that you're crushing it all over the place, right? Healthy in the workplace, healthy in home, healthy in your relationship. So, well, Dave, this has been really great. If someone is resonating with this conversation and specifically about framework, they want to learn more about what you do, where would you send them?
One quick reference would be our website. So we can post the website.
Yeah, I'll put the website
it's frameworkplanning.com. Email me at dave@frameworkplanning.com. And I think more than looking at a website or, reading material, actually having a conversation. Yeah. I love understanding where people are at and asking strategic questions. And usually that takes about, hour and a half to really kind of go through a lot of strategic questions to find out where are the pain points. Because a lot of times when a leader comes and says, hey, I really think I need something to help with this, or our team needs something, usually the surface reasons or issues aren't really the real issues. Right. And usually it's one or two layers down. So kind of going through that exercise. And I love having those conversations. We don't charge to have that initial conversation. Okay. So it's no loss, but it's an investment.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Is there a place to book a conversation with you on your website?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do have a spot to fill in your name and give us, and so we can set up a call or a meeting.
Awesome. Well, Dave, thanks so much for being on the podcast, man. I really appreciate you sharing just where things are in your life and where you come from. And again, personally, I've known you for a long time and I learned a few things today too. So thanks a lot.
Love it, James. You are an incredible leader and just so glad that you're doing this and you're helping so many people.
Thank you.
What a great conversation. Dave's journey and insight remind us that leadership isn't just about outcomes, it's about intentionality. His commitment to helping leaders grow in self-awareness, relational intelligence, and trust is exactly what's needed in today's leadership culture. If you want to learn more about his work or schedule a conversation, head over to frameworkplanning.com. And don't forget, if you haven't already, take 5 days to refocus with the 5-day leadership reset. It's free, simple, and built to help you lead with clarity and purpose. Start now at liveleadlast.com/reset. If you're looking for weekly encouragement and practical leadership tools, join the Rooted email community by texting GROW, GROW, to 66866. You can also connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'd love to hear what resonated with you from today's episode. And if this conversation
helped you grow, take a moment to rate, review, and share the episode. It helps more leaders like you find the tools and encouragement they need to live, lead, and last. Until next time, keep leading with integrity, living with intention, and building a legacy that matters.